I think Tripti.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Tripti. Nice to have you on board, and request you to take it forward. And all the best. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Just doing a quick mic check. I'm audible, no?
Yes. Yes. Very much.
It's lovely seeing you all here today. It is not just an honor and a privilege, but actually my very good fortune to introduce to you on behalf of FPPTI, a globally renowned cyber law and cyber security subject expert and authority on the world stage, Dr. Pavan Duggal. Dr. Pavan Duggal is founder and chairman of International Commission on Cyber Security Law. He's also the president of cyberlaws.net and has been working in the pioneering area of cyber law, cyber security, and mobile law. While a practicing advocate at the Supreme Court of India, Dr. Pavan Duggal has made an immense impression as well as authority, not just in the areas of his expertise, but with his work, not only on cyber law, cyber security law, but also artificial intelligence law and e-commerce law. A man of tremendous distinctions to his name and to his efforts. Looking forward to hearing you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Pavan Duggal.
Thank you, ma'am, for your kind words. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone present. Thank you, Navi, for giving me this opportunity to be on this dais of your distinguished organization. And the topic that we have actually in hand is a very interesting one. It's a topic that's primarily going to deal with a lot of issues of the future. Privacy in the metaverse era. What does this actually mean? It's a small topic, but it has got very deep meanings. First privacy, then metaverse, and then era. Three keywords in this topic. So we will be trying to go ahead and join hands together to jointly discover some of the things that I see on the horizon, and then try to ask questions before trying to answer them. Because when you start asking questions, that's the beginning of the evolution of legal jurisprudence. But before anything else, let me share with you this new paradigm that's now beginning to change our lives. The real world internet, slice it up with some virtual reality, add some augmented reality, and the concoction mix that comes across is clearly that of the metaverse. So metaverse is already so prevalent and is beginning to make so many waves and is already capturing the attention of all stakeholders. No wonder you have companies like Facebook already changing their names from Facebook to Meta because they see this huge potential on the Meta. But now the scenario exacts what exactly is this new paradigm of privacy on the metaverse. But before I go forward, I want to share with you a case study that I was involved in. And I want to examine that case study to ask some questions. So clearly, one of the clients had a female avatar on the metaverse. This was a female avatar through which the client was interacting with other male and female avatars. Needless to say, metaverse intrinsically requires you, amongst other things, also to have an avatar because it's our avatars and are manifest itself in the digital world, which specifically are the manifestation or instrumentation through which we are able to communicate. So these are the new digital humans that we talk of. So this client was using the female avatar on the metaverse. And then one fine day, some male avatar on the metaverse came and then digitally raped the female avatar. And since then, the actual world client has been very agitated because they want to take action against the male avatar. They want action against digital rape. And they're not amenable to any reason. They don't even recognize the fact that law still does not really talk about or does not deal with the concept of digital rape. But having said that, the client actually wants a lot of action in this regard. So while action is being done, this entire episode brings forward a number of important issues. Number one, do avatars have legality on the metaverse? Number two, if they have legality, are they entitled to privacy rights on the metaverse? Number three, what exactly is the scenario of privacy regulation or privacy protection on the metaverse? And number four, what's the position of existing legal frameworks in the context of the metaverse? So before we start going into the entire issue of the privacy on the metaverse, we have to realize that we are now no longer dealing with humans, which we are, because humans are ultimately using the metaverse, but they are using the metaverse through their new digital manifestations, which we call as digital humans or the digital avatar. In my latest book, Digital Humans and Law, I've sought to look at what are the current legal, policy, and regulatory issues pertaining to digital humans and what further requires to be done so as to further empower and develop the legal jurisprudence on digital humans. But as of date, when we talk, whether it's a Thanos in the film Infinity of Marvel, or whether it's Endgame Infinity or Marvel, or whether it's my avatar on my metaverse, all of them are digital humans and manifestations of digital humans. But the moment I talk about avatars, I find lawmakers in a state of bind. They're not even willing to recognize the fact that, yes, the next level of technological development is going to evolve around avatars. Well, they throw back to you the example of Second Life, which was probably one of the first earliest metaverses of the world. But then, despite having a lot of promise, Second World did not really achieve the kind of revolutionary impact that the creators of Second Life were actually saying. So they're saying, look, if a Second Life can come and go, let's wait for the metaverse to come, to evolve, to develop before we are able to finally come up with legal frameworks. So as of now, the entire legal jurisprudence is in a state of limbo. You still don't know whether your digital avatar on the metaverse is legal or not. So if I'm Pavan Duggal and I have my avatar on metaverse, again by the name Pavan Duggal, having my exact same characteristics, my exact appearance, my mannerisms, clearly it will not just only be my digital human manifestation, but more significantly, it can even be my identical digital twin. But again, for me to have expectation of privacy in this digital human manifestation, it's imperative that the law must first recognize my digital manifestation as a legal entity. As of now, there's no law in the world that really recognizes digital humans or digital avatars on the metaverse as legal entities. And rightfully so, because there are a lot of problems. Because a lot of scholars say, let's give a legal entity status to my digital avatars on the metaverse, because if you don't do that, you will not be able to go ahead and support the further growth of metaverse. And to that extent, to large level, I feel that argument has substantial value. But then how do you go ahead and give legal sanction and validity to digital avatars? Because they are ultimately nothing but bits and bytes. They are nothing but electronic records. Hence, at the very basic common denominator level, my digital avatar is nothing but data and information in the electronic form powered potentially by artificial intelligence algorithms or emerging technologies. So to the extent that there are electronic records, we see that cyber laws across the world have granted legality to electronic records. And therefore, to that extent that we treat digital avatars as electronic records, they can be granted legality. For example, in the Indian context, when I look at the Indian Information Technology Act 2000, I find that Section 4 tends to grant legality to all electronic format. So to that extent, I can say that my digital record, being my digital avatar on the metaverse, is ultimately nothing but my electronic data or electronic information in the electronic format. And that being so, it's legal and valid as far as metaverse is concerned. But that's still a matter of interpretation. We still don't have any case law in this regard as of yet. On top of it, now let's consider, assuming we have our digital avatars and assuming we grant them legalities, can they have an expectation of privacy? If not, can I, as a user, have an expectation of privacy? Well, I am a user. I'm governed in the physical world by the physical world laws and also by cyber laws. I have a very deep expectation of privacy, and I see that my privacy is tend to be governed under existing cyber laws, data protection laws, and dedicated privacy laws, depending on which jurisdiction I'm actually located. But if I have an expectation of privacy, the logical corollary is that I'm also having an expectation for privacy on the metaverse. But the fundamental question to answer is, does privacy actually exist on the metaverse? This is so because, unlike the physical world internet, on the metaverse, I'm leaving behind far more data points, far more electronic footprints than I actually leave behind in the physical world internet per se. And therefore, if I'm expecting privacy in this new metaverse era, then a lot of scholars believe that we are potentially misplaced in our thought process. There is actually no privacy on the metaverse. Yes, some people may still confuse between the concepts of anonymizations and also privacy. Now, I have the ability to create my own avatar. It can either be my digital twin on the metaverse, or it can just be an imaginary avatar, which has got no connection with my real world existence. So it's an imaginary world, and I come up with my imaginary avatar. Nobody knows me, but yet I'm hiding behind the cloak of the digital avatar. I'm wanting privacy. I'm expecting my digital avatar also to have privacy. Whether I will be able to have that or not is something that only technological developments over a period of time will be able to say. But today, when I look at the landscape, I find extensive collection of data at extensive data points across various levels and paradigms of the metaverse per se. Everybody on the metaverse is right now going ahead and collecting information. So when there is all kinds of sharks that are waiting around to hound on your data, if you think that you have an expectation of privacy, you'll have to think again. Can I say that my physical world privacy laws are applicable in the context of metaverse? Logically so. It should be the correct position. But then how do I go ahead and enforce my physical world privacy laws in the context of metaverse? That's indeed a very, very gray zone, because implementing or enforcing your physical world privacy laws in the real world is such a challenge. How do you go ahead and enforce this in the metaverse, where the only major actors who are interacting with each other are metaverse avatars or digital humans? So in a scenario like this, how can you ensure and insist that other digital avatars give your digital avatar and also to you as a metaverse user the same respect for your privacy as you would expect in the real world? That may potentially not be happening. So I think privacy is a slippery zone, a slippery slope on which we are walking as far as metaverse is concerned. And because the world still doesn't have any dedicated legal frameworks on metaverse, it's still a very, very gray area. No one can exactly say whether they have privacy on the metaverse or not. We would like to think that we have privacy. I'm not so sure whether we will be able to enforce the protection and preservation of our privacy on the metaverse per se. Going further, if I'm interacting on the metaverse with my avatar, there can be two kinds of consequences or two kinds of scenarios. Number one, I have my digital human, which is a digital twin of myself. And the second scenario is when I have a digital avatar in the metaverse who does not look to me, has no connection or identification with me or similarity with me, but is an imaginary creature. In both these scenarios, when I go ahead and interact with other digital humans on the metaverse, how does my data tend to get collected? I need to know, but I don't get much clarity because most of the time other players are not coming forward in a very, very crystal clear, clean breast manner to say that, look, this is how I'm actually going ahead and collecting your specific data. So if I don't know how my data is getting collected, my intrinsic expectation of privacy to be enjoyed as a right on the metaverse is going to be intrinsically impacted or even prejudicially impacted, to say the least. Number two, if my digital twin, maybe I have an exactly similar digital avatar like Pavan Duggal in the real world on the metaverse. Now, that digital avatar is not Pavan Duggal. It's only a digital human representation of Pavan Duggal. That being so, it's not likely to enjoy those minimum rights or expectations of privacy that Pavan Duggal as an individual would like to enjoy in the real world. So we will have intrinsic problems. So coming back to the digital rape case. So when the male avatar went ahead and raped the digital avatar of the female avatar, obviously it's not just a violation of the bodily privacy of the said digital human, it's also a grave infringement and having a prejudicial impact upon the enjoyment of the actual user who's using the female digital avatar. And if that happens, then what are the remedies? One scenario is very clear, that the current world laws should be equally made applicable to metaverse. And that's a given yes. Most of the countries have in place their own distinctive national laws in cyberspace. These are the national cyber laws, the national cyber legal regimes. And invariably across the world, when I look around, I find almost all the countries have by and large begun with a common minimum denominator. That's the UNCITRAL Model Law on Electronic Commerce that got ratified by the General Assembly of the United Nations on 30th of January 1997. And some countries have also relied upon the UNCITRAL Model Law on Electronic Signatures. So to that extent, clearly legality can be given to electronic records, but most of the time these aspects of the model laws have not really elaborated in greater detail about the issues pertaining to protection and preservation of privacy in the electronic ecosystem. So I find in the real world, the cyber laws are applicable not just to cyberspace, but logical corollary follows that they are equally applicable to metaverse per se. Having said that, that alone is not sufficient because most of the existing cyber laws have not been drafted, keeping in mind the new emerging paradigm of metaverse at large. Consequently, I find that there are a lot of existing actual world laws which are going to be equally applicable in the context of protection of privacy on the metaverse. Some countries have dedicated laws on privacy. Others have not focused on privacy, but have instead focused on data protection. And lawmakers across the world tend to use data protection and data privacy in interchangeable terms. So when I look at the European Union, and I find that the General Data Protection Regulation of the European Union, to a large extent, those elements could equally be made replicable and completely applicable in the context of metaverse per se. But how do we enforce them? That's another big question. So I will, as a user, have my privacy rights on the metaverse. If somebody, other user goes ahead and violates my privacy, and if I know his identity, I can sue him in court. Otherwise, I can sue unknown entities in court and ask the concerned metaverse platform or the metaverse service provider to give the real identity of the said metaverse entity so that the said entity could actually be litigated against in a court of law. But more significantly, as time passes by, I expect some minimum common codes of conduct to evolve on metaverse. And one of the codes of conduct will be that it is going to be expected from the creators of the metaverse avatars that they will not create avatars in a manner which go ahead and deface or prejudicially impact the appearance, the existence, or the data authenticity concept of the digital avatars per se. So I think it's going to be given yes and a given norm to the effect that you should not be going ahead and tampering with other digital avatars or the users behind the other digital avatars. So logically, there should be an expectation of privacy on the metaverse per se. But again, that's what is an utopian world. Whether that's going to exist in the real metaverse or not is something that only time will be able to tell. But when I look at the practical world experiences of cyber legal frameworks, I find that till such time there's not adequate criminal liability or penalty or a force of law that's attached behind a particular action, the same often doesn't tend to get replicated in complete enforcement and in complete compliance. So consequently, I think as we go forward, the world will require new legal frameworks on metaverse. A world will require new legal privacy protection principles on the metaverse. And the world would also require all metaverse stakeholders to come with a clean breast and say to the world and to all stakeholders onto the metaverse ecosystem that this is how I'm collecting your data. This is how I'm being transparent about what I'm collecting, how I'm collecting, and how I'll be using the same. So that at least people have an advance notice, whether it's the actual world users on the metaverse, whether it's actually nothing but the digital avatars. Because that's going to be the best way how you can actually go ahead and contribute to the development of a robust metaverse ecosystem or a metaverse era in the coming times. Second thing is, if the lawmakers are going to grant legality to metaverse, which I think ultimately should be granted, that's going to help in another big way in protection of the privacy rights of the metaverse avatars. Apart from privacy rights protection of the metaverse users per se. And that will again be dependent on how the lawmakers are going to behave or are going to work in this particular direction. So when I look at the recent Beijing declaration of the municipality of Beijing, where they have now come up with a new 4-year plan on how they want to go ahead and regulate digital humans. Therein I find seeds of the first kind of movement across the world, where lawmakers have at least begun thinking in the direction of regulating digital humans. And that will automatically mean digital humans on the metaverse per se, which effectively means that we could potentially be seeing the beginnings of the origin of metaverse privacy jurisprudence with the advent of this new Beijing declaration and the Beijing document that's been released by the municipality of Beijing. But more significantly, I believe going forward, metaverse has to build in strong legal parameters for protection of privacy on the metaverse. Whether it's only privacy, personal privacy, or whether it's data privacy, they'll have to be given appropriate attention by all metaverse stakeholders, specifically the lawmakers. So when I create my avatar, I have privacy in myself. I have privacy in the manner how my digital avatar has been created, and also in the manner how my digital avatar is interacting with other digital avatars on the metaverse. And that's an expectation both of personal privacy and also data privacy. Because when I create my exact digital twin or identical avatar of mine on the metaverse, I'm actually replicating a lot of my nuances, my personality, my traits, my appearances on the metaverse. And I have an expectation of privacy on those elements which are intrinsically made an integral part of my metaverse avatar. So there's going to be elements of data privacy. There's going to be elements of personal privacy, which will have to be dealt with in the context of avatars per se. Further, when I look at metaverse, at every moment, I'm leaving behind certain footprints. This is thanks to my activities that I'm doing via my digital avatar. So as we go forward, technology will also have to appropriately develop that the footprints that the metaverse avatars are leaving behind can be obliterated by the metaverse real owners or the real stakeholders, so that they can also proactively go ahead and contribute in the protection of privacy. So privacy in the metaverse is going to be protected not just only by technological means, but also by legal means and due diligence mechanisms. You will have to come up with new development of technologies that can enable further protection of personal privacy and data privacy on the metaverse. You will also have to come up with legal frameworks that can actually go ahead and ensure protection of privacy on the metaverse. And finally, we'll also have to look at more due diligence mechanisms that will have to be followed by metaverse stakeholders as they come forward in the direction of using metaverse in a big manner. So clearly, those all three elements will have to be made an integral component of the strategies as we go forward. But the beauty is, this is also just an evolving area of legal jurisprudence. Also, one particular stakeholder category which is going to be having an extremely important role in the protection of privacy will be the metaverse platform owners, or the concerned service providers who are providing various services of creation and maintenance of metaverse avatars. So there'll be nothing but the intermediaries of today's world. So can I say that the existing laws of the actual world pertaining to intermediaries can be made applicable in the context of the metaverse service providers? My instantaneous reaction is going to be yes, why not? So, depending on which jurisdiction you are, the concerned legal frameworks on intermediary liability is going to be applicable in the context of service providers on the metaverse at large. So if you're going to be in the US, you'll still like to go ahead and hide behind this absolute protection that's granted to you under Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. Mind you, at the time when they made the Communications Decency Act, they had no clue that something like metaverse is going to come, and there will be service providers on the metaverse, and maybe even Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act could be made equally applicable in the context of metaverse per se. If you are in the Indian context, then maybe you will be governed till such time further new law comes up by Section 79 of the Indian Information Technology Act 2000, where as an intermediary, by and large, you will not be made liable for third-party data or information made available, handled, or dealt with by you, provided you fulfill certain conditions. You comply with the Information Technology Act 2000 and rules and regulations made thereunder. You exercise due diligence while you discharge your obligations under the law. You do not conspire or abet in the commission of any offense. And once you're called upon to remove or disable access to any unwarranted data, you do the same expeditiously without vitiating the original electronic evidence in any manner whatsoever. So depending on whichever jurisdiction you're going to be there, the relevant legal frameworks impacting intermediaries are going to be equally applicable in the context of intermediaries on the metaverse per se. But as time passes by, I think governments and lawmakers will also have to start stipulating minimum parameters pertaining to protection of personal privacy and data privacy on the metaverse that metaverse stakeholders must specifically be adhering to. And similarly, if you are a person or an organization that's creating or maintaining metaverse avatars, the law is going to expect you that you will put up appropriate parameters in the creation and the actual day-to-day running of the digital avatars in such a manner that they go ahead and protect and respect the privacy of others, and also do not do any activity which has a prejudicial impact upon the enjoyment of data privacy or personal privacy of either digital avatars, other digital avatars on the metaverse, or of other metaverse users per se. So it's a very exciting area of legal jurisprudence that's evolving. In my book on the metaverse law, I have tried to highlight some of the important elements pertaining to privacy that need to be specifically evolving in this context. But let's remember, to a large extent, how privacy and its protection on the metaverse will evolve will ultimately be dependent upon a couple of things. Number one, how metaverse as a paradigm evolves and gets adopted by more and more people. Number two, how lawmakers go ahead and come up with enabling legal frameworks for regulating metaverse entities and also for protecting metaverse privacy. And third, how specifically legal frameworks are evolved in this regard. And fourthly, what kind of due diligence mechanisms are done or are performed on a voluntary basis by metaverse stakeholders so that they can contribute in their own voluntary manner to the entire cause of protection and preservation of metaverse privacy per se. So it's a very exciting world. The entire legal jurisprudence is waiting to develop. Well, as per one survey, we all will be spending about a couple of hours on the metaverse as part of our daily schedules in the next coming few years. And if that's going to happen, we will, apart from the initial infatuation to metaverse, be demanding that our personal privacy and also our data privacy in the context of metaverse is appropriately protected. And increasingly, lawmakers will have to be more proactive in coming up with legal frameworks in that regard. But that's some time away. Till such time that happens, all onus is going to be upon us as metaverse stakeholders, so that we can try to take due diligence mechanisms, bear caution, so that we can go ahead and protect not just our own privacy, but also our personal privacy and our data privacy in the context of metaverse per se. Very exciting area, and it'll be really interesting to see how the legal jurisprudence on metaverse laws and specifically metaverse privacy is going to evolve in the coming times. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Over to you, Madam Chairperson.
Tripti, I will just take a minute. Dr. Duggal, first of all, thank you very much, and quite impressive and quite interesting topic. I have a question. Can I go ahead, sir?
Please, sir.
Yeah. As we know, one option available to the metaverse users is to set an imaginary identity, right? I understand that our Information Technology Act has laws against the impersonation, right? Will this affect the avatar construction, what you're talking about?
Sir, it's a very interesting and a complicated question. It only will depend upon the facts and circumstances of each case. So if I'm using my exact digital twin, which is an exactly similar digital avatar, then, and if somebody copies my, say, facial expressions, my personality traits in another avatar on the metaverse, I can potentially be arguing the fact that this is a case of identity theft under Section 66C of the Information Technology Act. Because ultimately, even when he's copying my personality or my traits or my appearance, then to some extent, I can try to argue it that it's going to be brought within the ambit of identity theft, but that also is going to be dependent on what kind of evidence am I going to bring forward to produce that particular claim. But if I'm talking of a mere imaginary avatar, which has got no real connection with me, then imaginary avatar is nothing but an original literary or artistic work under the Copyright Act. And that being so, if somebody copies the same imaginary avatar as another avatar on the metaverse, clearly I can go against that particular entity under the Copyright Act and say that this particular imaginary avatar of mine is my original literary or artistic work, and the other person copying the same is tantamounting to violation or infringement of my copyright. But for that also, I'll have to go an extra mile and try to convince the concerned judges to show, because today judges are still pretty much getting used to the nuances of the internet per se. With the metaverse at large, we'll have to take some more options or some more efforts in making the judiciary sensitized to these newly emerging paradigms. But those could be some of the things that I think could happen. Thanks.
Excellent, sir. Thank you very much, Shreya. Thank you. Great.
Thanks.
Yeah, Tripti, back to you, please.
Yes, well, Mr. Duggal, firstly, a very big thank you for such an insightful session. You took us on a very exciting, path of future discovery on this Columbus voyage, if I may so, between the real world and augmented reality. It felt like an alter ego point of view that, you were sort of laying out along with the responsibilities and loopholes that come with it. Your analogy with a very interesting case study focusing on the digital avatars and their privacy rights within the legal framework helped us, at least me, to get a better understanding and make us all think for, the way our electronic and digital behavior is going to be framed by, and how we are going to develop an etiquette or an operating procedure around that. Because there is definitely not just a sense of reliability, but sense of liability that comes with it. The example was really hard-hitting, but so true to look at it from a digital me to a real me. On that note, I would have never connected the legal world with the Marvel world, but put food for thought there. The thoughts on legal sanctions and the digital manifestations from a technological perspective, the way they exist today, versus the legal perspective. Legality to the electronic form of me, whether I write an email or whether I act out my email by way of an avatar. the stark difference that comes out, what I speak in word, but what I do in deed, in actions. When actions speaking louder than words, we are putting that to question here today. But it was very clarifying from a sense of what I can expect. Right of privacy expectation in the metaverse, where we are still figuring it out for real people across the globe. And now looking at it from this entire digital manifestation perspective, and in the new emerging paradigm that we are going to soon face, it's not just relevant, but I think the new normal that's going to be coming up. And it raises a lot of legal and ethical points and issues, and your views on navigating them between the existing legal jurisprudence and the ones on the horizon are actually indeed spot on, especially about maintaining integrity and dignity of my personal privacy and my digital manifestation and the avatar's privacy. On that note, expressing our appreciation and gratitude, Dr. Duggal, for sharing with all of us today your valuable insights. A big thank you once again. It was a pleasure hearing you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. It's been a
Ramesh,
pleasure.
over to you.
Thank you.
No, there is a question, Dr. Duggal, if I can raise it. One gentleman had asked,
Please.
Mr. Subraido. His question is, like WhatsApp, initial versions of metaverse may have their terms and conditions say that laws of California would be applicable. Only later we may see the Indian laws apply and so on. Is that okay? Is that what we are looking at?
I think that could be one of the scenarios that could be happening, because for stakeholders who are outside India or in the US, they would want to definitely go under the cloak or the umbrella of their respective US laws.
Right.
But in case if you're in India, you can clearly rely upon Section 1 and Section 75 of the Information Technology Act to say that I'm in India, and since your metaverse offerings are available on my computer systems and networks located in India, you become amenable to the Indian Information Technology Act 2000. So, but yes, initially there's going to be a lot of disconnect between various versions of the which jurisdiction or which laws are going to be applicable. Till such time, we tend to get more clarity in the coming times.
Excellent, sir. Thank you very much. Tripti, please take it forward. I'm really sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you, sir.
No problem at all. Wonderful having you, sir, again.
Thank you.